What's going on, y'all? This is Trent from Trentfluence. Today, we're going to talk about empathy and accountability while making some spaghetti Bolongese today. So, I hope you're going to enjoy that. And today, as you can see, I'm Knuckles, 1,000,000% muscle. And I'm going to try to lift this dumbbell with my weak hand. If I could do that, you definitely got to watch the video. Alright, I did that. Now you gotta watch. That's 80 pounds. Yeah. Empathy versus accountability. Let's go. Yeah. What's going on, guys? This is Trent from Trentfluence, and today I want to talk about empathy and accountability. And the biggest reason I talk about this is because I have been known as a person to be very empathetic, doesn't really get mad at people, and just kind of just lets things slide, or at least just wouldn't hurt a fly. But that's not to say that I don't have my own boundaries or things that kind of get on my nerves. But a lot of times I'll just let stuff slide because usually stuff isn't really that deep. And a lot of things aren't. And it's understandable to be empathic of somebody's situation if they're going through something. Like somebody goes through a divorce, a breakup, they lost their house, a car, became homeless, they had a bad day at work. Or they had like a rough upbringing. It's definitely fair to give people the benefit of the doubt that, okay, they may be a little fucked up mentally or physically due to X, Y, or Z. But also, despite those circumstances, that does not give anybody the excuse to disrespect or mistreat you or treat you negatively due to their circumstance. And that's what I want to talk about today. So, knowing myself, I've really given people a lot of leeway. And there's nothing wrong with just being nice to people, understanding people are coming from, trying to empathize with them and understand and trying to help. But at the same time, holding people accountable, especially when they ask for help and are trying to get advice but never follow it and end up in the same situation they're in, sometimes you have to hold people accountable with like, hey, you complained about the same thing 10 days in a row, asked for advice but done absolutely nothing and taken initiative to solve your problem. All right, what's going on here? And even more so, a stronger example is when you understand where people are coming from, understand why they're in a bad mood or talk a certain way, but allowing them to disrespect you under the guise that you're just being empathetic towards them and allowing them to vent out their frustrations. But they honestly, people don't really have a right to take their frustrations out on you or invalidate you for being yourself. And I myself have been in situations where I've tried to express my feelings in a situation and my feelings were invalidated. I've been called a snowflake before just because I wanted to express that something that somebody did made me uncomfortable. And it's like, how do you feel if like you're trying to be understanding and get your word out and then somebody outright just invalidates your feelings? And in my case, I never even said anything back about that. Like, I never held them accountable for like, hey, that was fucked up. You shouldn't have said that to me. And I didn't appreciate that, in any one of those phrases. Because usually I used to like always avoid conflict. Never really like to make enemies. But as a result, it's like people would walk all over me. Or I would allow people to say any sort of thing and not establish any boundaries at all. I would have my pet peeves and have things that I don't want to happen, but never actually enforce those boundaries because I would end up being like, well, this person's probably going through this. They probably don't understand, had a bad upbringing, so I'm just going to let it slide. And you can only let so much slide before it's like, okay, now you're literally just being a parasite to me. Like your empathy can be very easily taken advantage of if you don't have any boundaries to establish. And setting boundaries will allow you to force people to take accountability for their actions towards you. And whether it be either saying I'm sorry or they end up walking away and never talking to you again, they still have to recognize that if they treat you in a way that negatively affects you, that needs to be addressed and established. And if it doesn't, that will only give them the incentive to only keep on doing that same behavior. And it's only going to be detrimental to you in the long run. And probably if you don't actually address it, you'll end up probably just being a pushover, a people pleaser. And there's something wrong, again, I've mentioned this in previous videos, there's nothing wrong with wanting to help people or wanting to be an understanding person. That's great. It's good to have empathy. It's good to understand. It's good to try to see the shoe from the other foot. But on the same time, you can understand somebody and also understand that what they're doing is fucked up to you. But it's not always perfect. You can't understand everybody. And at the end of the day, if your boundaries are crossed, I'm not saying go out and fight somebody, of course. None of that. Unless you really have to defend yourself physically, which I hope that never comes to that. But you have to really buckle down and set your boundaries. And that's hard. For me, especially the person who's been a pushover, this one, I don't like conflict. I never liked conflict. I never liked confronting people. I never liked the idea of like, hey, like, you got me fucked up. I do not like what you said. Like, I do not like doing that. Some people, they could do that just fine. They love conflict, and that's good on them. For me, it took me a while to be okay with that. And at the same time, I have a hard time just, to me, it felt like it was mean to yell at people, to call people out, to be like, hey, I didn't like that. I don't like what you're doing to me. 'Cause I thought it was like, about having a big ego and being a macho man or macho person and laying down the law, which is not the case looking into it years later, understanding that you only have so much that you can take as a person. And so if you just allow people to just take that, throw out the window, and just disrespect you, then you're only being disingenuous to yourself and disregarding your own needs and wants out of an interaction or out of a relationship or out of just honestly any encounter that you deal with, because you want to be empathetic and not cause conflict, understand where they're coming from. And for many situations I've dealt with, I definitely have just allowed people, because I didn't want conflict to just go. But I think, one time in middle school, I let somebody like slap me, and to get out of like being bullied, I was like, hey, I owe you money for homework, right? And they're like, oh yeah. And I think I gave them like $1. And then let them go their way, because I was like, well, he grew up poor and he has a bad household, so if I just give him some money, he'll go away and leave me alone. And I'm just like looking back at it, I'm like, man, what the heck? Like, what was I doing? And again, I'll preface this. This isn't a call to like just be violent, be a dick, be an asshole to everybody, but it's just to take a stand up for yourself and hold people accountable for the disrespect. Call people out on their bullshit. Because people will bullshit you in life if you allow it to happen. And just in general, I'm personally done with it. I'm done with allowing people to just speak to me disrespectfully. And it's not often, but it's happened to the point where it's like, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. I understand that you're going through something, but I'm just not going to allow you to say what you please about me that doesn't sound right. We can joke, but there's a line, and you have to recognize when you've crossed the line. But the thing is, only you can establish that line. Only you know what you want and need, what you like and dislike, what you can and can't stand. People can't do that for you. People are for most likely going to just take advantage of you instead of actually give you ideas like, oh, I see these are your boundaries, I'm going to respect them. Some people are like that. It's very rare. I usually try to do that with people. It's like somebody's mad at me and I don't really understand. I'd be like, okay, you seem mad at me after I did this, so I recognize that's probably a boundary for you. I'm not going to cross it. And it takes a level of emotional maturity to get to that point, and a lot of people don't have that. And that's why it's more important to focus on what your boundaries are. And instead of being worried about being an inconvenience to other people because you called them out, think about being an inconvenience to yourself. Because at the end of the day, the person who's going to suffer the most from not holding people accountable for how they treat you negatively is yourself. It's going to lower your self esteem. It's going to make you a lot less likely to establish boundaries, a lot less likely to actually take initiative into solving issues in your social life, personal life in general. And some people were inherently raised or just inherently have the traits to be able to be more confident and able to call people out on their bullshit and be able to establish those boundaries a lot easier. 'Cause a lot of people say it's like, because I don't care. But that's not true. It's because you care about yourself and sometimes about the other person that you establish those boundaries, that you call it out, that you actually want to solve the situation. Because I certainly care about myself. And a lot of times I do care about the other person, especially if it's somebody I know. I care about them. That's why I try to empathize and see from their side, okay, why are they acting like this? But it's still a matter of if they wronged you. First of all, two wrongs don't make it right. Don't just wrong them back and be petty. But to acknowledge that, hey, you wronged me. So either we find a way to get through this, you take accountability, or you recognize that you did wrong, or you lose me as a person. And that's kind of the way I view it. And it's just overall not accepting disrespect, not accepting people that treat you negatively. And for some relationships, it's hard. Like for parent and child dynamics, for wife and husband dynamics, or just people that are close together. Like it's hard to do that for a lot of people when you got to call stuff out. But at the same time, it will end up making the relationship better in a sense where it's like you understand where the line is. So that way, if somebody's about to cross it, it's like, hey, whoa there. Like, don't say that around me because I'm not okay with it. Like, whatever it's a trigger or if it's something that outwardly is just offensive or something that like it physically, even if it's something that physically you do, it's like, hey, I don't really do hitting or slapping, even though you do it with your friends. I don't do it. Like, set those boundaries. Just because you understand, like, hey, my friends do it all the time. I'm not one of your dude bros that do that all the time. Like, make it known. That's honestly just the point of this video. It's just to still be empathetic and be a good person to people, yes, but be a good person to yourself and acknowledge when the line's been crossed, when you're being disrespected, when you're being mistreated. Because closed mouths don't get fed. Classic saying, I know, but that line's fucking true. If you just sit there and just mull it over and just let things happen to you, people are more inclined to keep on doing the same shit to you that was disrespectful in the first place. You can internalize all you want, get mad at the world, and start your villain arc, or you can address it and try to take initiative to either solve that shit, hash it out, or get rid of that person. Some people are just toxic and don't belong in your life or don't need to be. sometimes the closest people gotta go because they are no longer a positive influence on your life. Things happen like that. I hope it doesn't happen to people. But at the same time, you have to recognize when you're being empathetic, you're trying to understand, but the other people, the other person, the other party is just not. And just because you know where they're coming from does not give them an excuse to take things out on you and make you feel like shit. And yeah, that's kind of all I have. Honestly, it's not too hard of a concept to grasp, but it is really hard to implement because at the end of the day, if somebody you're face to face with somebody in the heat of the moment, a lot of people get very argumentative. But it really takes a level of emotional maturity to take a step back and recognize the situation you're in, recognize what this person you're associating is what is going through, and why things start in the first place, and recognize what action should be taken, whether you should call them out, whether you should walk away, whether you should delete them from your life forever, or whether you should just, take a break from each other. It's hard. But the worst thing you can do is to just let it happen. In the majority of cases, that's the worst thing you can do. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any cases where you gotta let things happen, where you can't let things happen. But if that's your only course of action for every single thing in your life that happened that disrespects you or is inconvenience to you or is a negative influence on your life, then you are definitely going to not be a happy camper, as they say. It'll cause you to really, at least in my experience, start internalizing things a lot more, start to become very resentful internally, and make you kind of fake, honestly. Like have a bubble projection of being a happy person around people you don't like, but then on the inside be like, I don't even like these people. Hey, if you don't like them, why are you around them? You understand they like your presence, but do they even deserve your presence? Like, do you even like being around them? No, you can understand that, but at the same time, take accountability. Have people take accountability for how they treated you, and take accountability for yourself as well, to not allow yourself to be treated any sort of way. But that's all I got. This is Trent from Trentfluence. I hope you enjoyed the video. This one was kind of more off the cuff, but I am definitely glad I got this one out, especially for New Year's. Happy New Year to everybody. Once you see this video, it is going to be 2025 soon. So maybe this will age well, maybe it'll age right well. Who knows? I like Nope. But yeah, other than that, have a good one. Hope you enjoyed the food in the background. Made spaghetti. And have a good one. Happy New Year and peace.